Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Take It to the Max. I'm Steve Harper, I'm the Commercial Director at IT Desk. Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine and one of our strategic partners, Glenn Banks from Kinspeed. Thanks for joining us, mate. For anybody who doesn't know you, because you are famous in South Yorkshire, but any sort of further beyond than that, just let us know a little bit about yourself.
I don't really feel famous in my own house, to be honest with you, Steve. But yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Glenn. I'm the managing director of Kinspeed Limited, company based in Sheffield. We do Sage account systems. We install, develop anything Sage related. We are your people. I'm actually a qualified accountant by trade, so that's probably why you've got me in for today's topic. And I do like to help and advise and interfere when customers are having new systems installed, and help advise on some of the issues that you're wanting to discuss today.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. I think it's great to have you. One, because you guys have got a long history in working in the ERP space, a lot of experience, dealt with a lot of different sectors, but you sort of being from an accounts background, you see it probably seen it from both sides of the fence, really.
Yeah, I was actually a customer of Kinspeed's initially.
Yeah.
I worked for a customer as finance director for about 10, 15 years
Right.
before I joined Kinspeed. But I kind of specialised in upgrading their systems.
Yeah.
It's something that I was quite good at, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So when Ian, my predecessor, was standing down, he said, "Why don't you come and do this? You can help and advise the MDs and the FDs. You know what page they're on, what they want from the systems." And yeah, that's kind of my background.
Probably something I've never asked you then. Like you sort of your role before sort of Kinspeed, was there already an ERP solution in place in that business, or what did you sort of take it from something maybe a smaller business tool such as Sage 50 into an ERP solution?
I actually took it from paper.
Right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I actually took over from a guy who I'm still in contact with, and he might watch it, so I'll have to be careful what I say. But he had everything was done on paper.
Yeah.
And then he used Sage 50 just to produce the nominals and the cash book, but all sales invoices and everything were all done paper.
Yeah.
And all day books were done on paper. But when I joined, they'd already bought Pegasus Opera.
Right.
So I implemented Pegasus Opera, realised which is a legacy system, one for the older people that are watching. And I realised within about 6 months that nothing worked right in it. And I'd used Sage in a previous role.
Yeah.
So I then got Kinspeed on the phone, because I'd dealt with Kinspeed previously, and said, "Can we put Sage in?" And that was Sage MMS at that point, which then became Sage 200. So I actually joined a company that was doing stuff on paper.
I mean that is quite a jump.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah.
I mean, what were the kind of, again, sort of the big red flags that's kind of like you kind of saw in that business, like, we need ERP?
I think that business, they didn't manufacture, but they what they did was they installed commercial kitchens.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stock involved. There's a lot of buying stuff in. There's a lot of bespoke items, actually.
Yeah.
Every bench or every worktop is a unique size. And there was no stock control in there.
Right.
They had a showroom as well where they sold knives and things like that. And yeah, so there were no stock. There was no controls in there as a business. And I just went in and just saw 40 people just all doing the jobs, and no real financial controls or visibility in there, and quarterly accounts that were produced out of a system where none of the information was actually being produced out of that system.
Yeah.
And I just thought, we just need to bring all this together. And yeah, when we put Opera in, nothing balanced. I couldn't even get a trial balance to balance,
Right.
which is, as an accountant, is quite frightening.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to trust your figures. So I very quickly went out and got Sage MMS, which became 200, which is big on the commercial side. We always said that Sage 200 has a financial side, which is your sales ledger, purchase ledger, cash book, nominal ledger. But then there's the commercial modules, which is sales orders, purchase orders, stock.
Yeah.
things like that. So it was to get that in, get some stock control in, and just put some processes in place.
Do you think? Do you think? Obviously, an ERP system is it's an investment.
Mm.
Do you think? How quickly do you think that business saw a return on ROI on?
Probably, I'd say within 6 months, to be honest.
It
From
sounds
where they
like it,
were,
from what you're saying, like, from
yeah,
where they were to have very little control.
yeah.
So all of a sudden, it'd be like sort of, I guess, going from a bicycle to a Rolls Royce in
Yeah,
some ways.
I don't know if I'd call it. I'd always call Sage 200 a Volvo. I think it's. I think it's a very sturdy, boring system that does exactly what you want it to do.
Yeah,
Which is why it still sells a lot more now than Sage would like it to.
yeah.
Because Sage want everybody to buy Sage intact. But Sage 200 is actually a very, very robust, boring product that does the job well. So I think the ROI was quite quick in that business.
Yeah.
It does vary from business to business and what they've already got in place and what they're moving from and to.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. We'll probably end up touching on this, I'd assume, at some point anyway. But just in that, talking about the transition, say from like paper to ERP, what do you see sort of a similar thing now in terms of what AI might bring? In terms of like that jump in terms of efficiency, similar to like
Yeah.
kind of, I guess at that time, people in that business probably didn't know what they didn't know. And, it came along and it sort of changed things. And it's, I'm sure there has been enhancements and stuff over the years, but in terms of like the next big leap in terms of where people might, it's really going to change the way they work.
Yeah.
Do you think it's sort of similar that? Or?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a lot of interest in AI at the moment, and it's interesting both from a staffing point of view, from a business point of view, how a business uses it, how the staff use it, how you need to be getting staff who start to understand AI. I think it's something that education providers need to be starting to think about as well.
Yeah.
And I know that isn't what we're here to discuss today, but
No, it's fine,
but I do think it's important
Yeah.
that actually I think the team. I think the team need to be understanding AI and how staff are using it. I've got staff using it day to day. I've got a large team of developers who are using ChatGPT to help them with the coding occasionally.
Yeah.
Whereas they used to turn and ask the colleagues, I think often they just, what does ChatGPT say now as well? And I think we need to be aware that customers will start doing that as well.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a shift in terms of sort of what sort of businesses like mine and yours sell, or how we sell it. Because Chat GPT, is a massive, it's a rabbit hole for one, and I do still think there's always going to be that thing of you need somebody in control and to sort of sense check it, and I think that's where customers need to sort of be mindful that it's not a I can't remember the word, sort of a tool that's going to fit every scenario, and there's definitely some dangers of using AI generated code in the wrong way. And I think that's where the expertise you guys have had and us for years around security and product is still going to be very important in making sure that customers aren't exposed to unnecessary risks.
I think that's true. I think AI is a very powerful tool. I'm using it. Some of the products that I use to like analyze our data. I haven't even asked for it to be there, and I'm suddenly getting monthly emails sent through with summaries of my P&Ls and everything, and it's like. And actually, I know Sage are going down an AI route at the moment. Strangely, they've used the same name as Microsoft. It's called Copilot.
I could be wrong, and you'll know more about this than me. I think they are using the Copilot platform, so the Microsoft Copilot platform. So one thing we're doing a lot of, some of it's conceptual at the minute, but you can spin up a version of Copilot in Azure and then point it at obviously your data and train it on that. So we're experimenting at the minute, pointing it. I mean, we both use Halo, so we're obviously experimenting quite a lot in terms of if we point it at Halo and it gets to know that data and what we use it for. How can it improve efficiency around that? And I think, and again, I could be wrong. I think Sage have sort of decided to use it in the same way. So rather than reinvent the wheel and sort of write their own AI, they've kind of gone, well, hold on, there's a really good one over there. Can we put a Sage T-shirt on it and see some of the benefits.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where it's built from. I know they've invested a lot into AI.
Yeah.
So if it is on a Microsoft platform, which I honestly don't know if it is, then yeah, I think they're elaborating on that. I mean, I was at a conference a few months ago with the CTO of Sage, who was the guy who actually founded Sage Intacct.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of all their AI work, and he actually said something very important, and I think from an accounts point of view as well, I know you on the Dynamics side will get this, is that actually the when it's in your accounts package, you've got to be able to trust it 100%.
I was literally just going to ask you this because, again, I'm a big lover of AI,
Yeah.
and I'm starting to have a lot of conversations, as I say, sort of in the Business Central space, because it's now baked in, and kind of in the last wave release. And one thing I've been wondering in terms of adoption, will finance directors, finance managers, accountants, will they trust it? Because you're right, you've got to have confidence in what's coming out. And I'm not saying AI can't ever get anything wrong. I mean, having knowing a fair bit about it, I've got a lot of confidence in it. But yeah, you've just touched on something there that's going to be a really interesting thing to see in terms of the adoption, whether the trust is there.
That's the challenge I think accounts packages and these providers like Sage and Microsoft have got. They've got to gain that trust.
Yeah.
As I say, I use a package called LifePlan on some of our own data internally, and actually I get a summary each month, and actually 90% of it is very, very good.
Yeah.
Some of it I look at it and I think, but that's wrong.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that's and that's the AI generated stuff, and you're like, okay, so it's getting there.
Yeah.
And the 90% is teaching me some stuff that I would have had to dig deep to find.
So is the thing that you kind of see and kind of go, that's wrong? Is that gut feeling, or is that because you can see there's the lack of the human train of thought there?
Yeah, I
how
think
it's come to that.
I think it is. Yeah, and it's interesting. And just to expand on AI a bit, it's when I look at, I always thought that AI would potentially. I always thought before AI came along that actually our business was a bit bulletproof. We install systems, we consult around it, we've got a team of developers, and you're like, well, actually, nothing can do any of those things.
Yeah.
Well, actually, AI can help with the development. I don't think it can do it. I think
No.
it can help and it can advise.
Yep.
But you still need that human element. I'm actually thinking that it's actually our consultancy now, which is probably AI proof, because I don't think you'll ever get AI to a stage where it knows what a human knows and has the 20, 30 years of experience that a human has.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, but from a data point of view, it's interesting that it's starting to analyse stuff and it's getting the vast majority right. I just don't think it's there totally yet.
I'd agree with a lot of that. I think like it's you look at where we've come in the sort of the past couple of years since the real emergence of some of this stuff, and you think what we're seeing now in terms of AI and Business Central, Sage. I'm fascinated to see where we'll be in maybe a couple of years as we get down sort of down the AI agent route, and it becomes a lot more commonplace, and yeah, just to basically see will the thing come true where they say AI will replace people's jobs, or will it be people that use AI will replace people in their jobs? I think will be that sort of the interesting thing to see.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we'll move on a little bit, get off the AI thing, because we could spend forever and a day on there. So I'll say a sort of a statement now, and you sort of tell me your thoughts, whether you think it's sort of true or false, that year end, your financial year end, is the best time to implement an ERP solution.
Depends on the business.
Okay.
It's a yes and a no.
Yep.
There are positives and there are negatives to changing your account system, your ERP system at year end. From a purely accounting perspective, it's cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
When you run your year end on a system, getting technical for the accountants, the accountants who are watching, or for people who aren't watching to learn, everything in your P&L basically gets zeroed at year end.
Yeah.
So, and it gets rolled up into your balance sheet and your P&L reserve and your balance sheet. So it's a perfect time to move systems because it's as clean as your nominal codes are going to be.
Got you.
and you can restructure codes if you want at that point. If you're not doing a migration, I always say that if you move from Sage 50 to 200, it's a migration. You can migrate, or you can start with opening balances and take the opportunity to tidy stuff up, which
Yeah.
we'll probably come on to when we're talking about changing ERP systems anyway. But so it can be a positive from that perspective. It is the time of year when your accounts team are at the busiest, which is a negative.
Yeah.
I know that it always amazes me that most people have a financial year end either at Christmas or New Year when everybody's on holiday,
Yeah.
or at the end of March to time the tax year, which tends to impact with Easter.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's actually the two worst times you could actually have a financial year end, but it's
Yeah.
when the majority of people do it. So you tend to be short staffed. You tend to have your accounts team at their busiest. So it's actually a bad time
Yeah.
if you've got year ends at that time. And I would also say that a lot of our services, and probably yours on the dynamic side, are taken up in December and March because that's when everybody wants to do their upgrades or new ERP systems as well.
Yeah.
Because they want to time it in with their year end. So but then you have got other things like there's tax incentives, using capital allowances in their financial years. So there's lots of different, and that's why I can't say it's a yes or no answer.
Get it.
It's what works best for your business. From your accounts team, you're probably better off doing it away from year end. For the rest of the business, and for your external accountants and your auditors, it's probably a lot cleaner to do it at year end.
Yeah.
Because it might push your audit costs up because suddenly you're having to audit not only one set of figures, but two sets of figures, and making sure the transition across systems as well.
Do you think sort of sector makes a difference on when you should do your?
Yes and no. Yeah, but it's hard to say. I think it is down to individual businesses as opposed to sector and how they actually operate. Again, if you've got a business that's large on stock, then I know people do perpetual stock takes, but often they don't. There's still a lot of businesses that do stock takes at year end. So your stock figures are accurate.
Yeah.
So you've got all your stock quantities that balance back to your nominal, your stock on your nominal. So it's a good time to do it while you know everything is right. And you know that stock figure balances back to what's in the nominal and it's what's been counted. So I can see that. But again, from a financial services perspective, where there's no stock involved, there might be WIP and people's time and everything.
Yeah.
So there's still some form of stock in there. And again, it's doing it at a time when everything's been counted and everything that you're sure everything's accurate, I think is more important. And again, I think it depends on whether you're taking your existing data with you into your new system or whether you're starting with opening balances as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, you'll have a little bit more of probably a view of the better route for that. Generally, we always suggest for any new implementations that you just take your live data. I mean, there is obviously the consideration that you're going to need to access the previous stuff, but from a simplicity point of view, we're very much kind of like take the bare minimum, have a bit of a clean slate. Is there any scenarios that you've found where you can't take that approach? You've got to take it.
Yeah, sometimes the customer insists and they want everything historical. From a Sage 50 to a Sage 200, which is quite a common one that we do. So Sage 50 is small business.
Yeah.
Sage 200 is a mid-market product, and people want to upgrade onto Sage 200. Sage have got a migration tool to assist with that, so you can just migrate the data and upgrade it into 200, and people can carry on. We recommend they don't do that.
Yeah.
What I would much sooner people do is, because Sage 200 is multi-company and you can have unlimited companies, I would sooner migrate that data and hold it in 200 as a historical company so people can go back and see it if they want. They would have access to it. But I would always start with a clean set of data as a preference.
Yeah.
It lets you get rid of any old accounts, any old nominal codes you don't need. You know as well as I do, if you try and delete an account that's got transactions in it, you can't do it.
No.
It's just got to sit there forever.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to data cleanse.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You're investing a lot of time
Yeah.
and money into these systems, so you don't want to sort of move over with sort of existing inefficiencies.
Plus, what was right for you when you were on Sage 50 or a Zero or a QuickBooks, you were probably a very different
Yeah,
business then
yeah,
to what you
absolutely.
are now. So
Yeah,
again, I think it's a time to sit down with your external consultants and say, right, what's the best that we can do moving forward? What do we need to future-proof this business as well? So I think it's
yeah.
a good opportunity to take that.
No, I completely agree. And touching on sort of in the transitioning a little bit more, what from our point of view, we're very sort of passionate about getting the training right, making sure that users can be trained really on their system seat with their data, again to try and one help the culture change. Sort of going in, I think you don't want to leave it too late with people, and they you drop the system on them sort of late on. From our point of view, we record everything via Teams as well, so you kind of use that as from an induction point of view for anybody that might come into a business that's not seen Sage Business Central before. You can say, okay, first thing you do, watch this stuff. Again, from years of experience from your side of things, is there anything that you disagree with there, or anything that you kind of say, well, really, this should be an absolute necessity when it comes to sort of training up users?
From years of experience, I would say something always goes wrong on every project, and it's usually around. It's usually around something that you don't know about.
Yeah,
It's important to learn how the customer works. There's always something that somebody does in the corner somewhere that you miss.
yeah,
So you need everyone invested in it.
mm.
I think the user acceptance testing, once the training's taken place, is vital. And it's so yeah, so training definitely.
I,
We like to get everybody in during the sales process, if possible, to actually see the demo, to
yeah,
come up with issues, try and solve problems at that stage.
yeah,
And then when we get the order and we get to the scoping sessions,
mm,
again, we have separate scoping sessions with the teams to scope everything out. We get hold of their data. We'll create a test system with their data on
mm.
at that point that they can then go away and do the training on their data.
Something you said there, I completely agree. And I think user acceptance testing can almost make or break
Yes.
the project. And I think that's probably the biggest pitfall maybe that customers I've seen where they don't take that too seriously. They sometimes think, well, we're paying you guys to implement the system. It's just on you guys for the success of it. But if the UAT phase isn't sort of really taken seriously and done in detail with everybody that's going to be using that, like I say, it's very easy to get to go live and then to find there's a problem that really that should have been addressed weeks and weeks before.
I completely agree with you. The number of times that we send somebody live and then within a few days somebody's shouting saying, "Well, this never works," and it wasn't on a UAT document, so we wouldn't have tested it. And but we like to emphasise that people should, if if they do a job on their current system, they should test it on their new system.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, you're right. And to be honest, these people are paying us good money
Mm,
to be the experts in
correct.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
And I get it, and they want a good service from us, but we only know what we know.
yeah.
We don't know what we don't know.
Correct. Yeah,
You can't know the unknowns. And yeah, it should be. I'd sooner be sorting something out when somebody's testing something than in the live system,
yeah,
every time. And I get why customers are busy. Um, it's difficult.
mm,
It's difficult finding the time.
yeah,
I've just done it on Sage 50 or I've just done it on QuickBooks.
yeah,
Why have I got to do it again on there?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm busy. We're about to get a new system, which is adding to the pressure.
yeah,
I completely get it, but yeah, and it's something I try and drill into our teams as well to make sure that people are doing that testing. We have regular catch-up calls with the customer for them to share their issues and are they on track with it. We have sign-off documents for UAT that we make people sign before they go live. There's still always things that go wrong.
yeah. No, absolutely. And again, we probably experience different versions of what I'm about to say now because there's a difference in approach in terms of how we deliver our sort of business central offering. You guys would say so. From our point of view, we're fixed scope, fixed outcome. So we're very sort of rigid in this is the scope, this is what's included, this is not, which is great from our point of view in terms of being able to set out this is exactly what it's going to look like, exactly what it's going to get, and remove some of the, I guess, risk of when you kind of maybe looking to enter do a customization for a client we don't know, because often ERP solutions are sold as a bit of a ball of clay. They can do anything. They can be tailored to you. So we're kind of very rigid in the sense of we don't like doing anything outside of that so we don't have the scope creep. From your experience, what's the advice you can give to customers or people considering ERP, and that you're sitting down for the scoping sessions? What are the things they should avoid?
It's almost as though you know what my answer is going to be on that. I mean, I've got a large team of developers. I mean, from a Sage 200 perspective, I think we've got the largest team of Sage 200 developers outside Sage in the UK. So very few of our customers have not got some sort of development or bespoke on there. I always say that Sage 200 can do 80 to 90% of what your processors want. We can get it to do the other 10, and we've actually got some very big and some very complicated customers as a result. So I think a lot of our issues come from understanding the customer requirements. Now, whether that's from the customer not making it clear, or us not extracting that from the customer, or us not documenting that right. And that tends to give us a lot of problems, preferably at UAT. Yes, we're working more towards your model, actually, of trying to capture everything in the scoping documents and getting it signed off there. But we are a big believer of, if something goes live and there's a problem, all hands on deck, and we've got to get it solved.
Absolutely.
It's you've got to get the customer happy. Ultimately, and I'd just sooner catch it at UAT. So we're back to UAT again, and naturally that includes all of our dev work as well.
I'd like to say I think the scope led model is 100% got a place. There are there's certainly clients I know you work with that you couldn't do a migration to a new system, a new version, without some of those complexities at go live. It would grind that business to a halt. I'd probably say, from our point of view, we generally try and avoid that just for the added complexities, and we'll kind of say, well, can we look at the phased approach where we deliver and get you up and running, we get you feeling the benefits of the system, and then we'll circle back for a phase 2 to then sort of, once we've ironed out any of the bugs, to do sort of your customized development and stuff like that. Which if we had customers that have kind of come to us and we've kind of had to say, well, we can't help you because it doesn't fit our model. But that's how I think you guys, like you say, with the size of team you've got another great string to the bow where, and the number of years you've been doing it, you can tackle that in a way where you're mitigating some of the risks we've seen that's go wrong before. I guess the biggest probably impact or difference from a customer is maybe sometimes them appreciating that, and there's a cost element there in terms of the days required, which I think sometimes can be a little bit underestimated, because they're used to always working that way. I don't think customers doesn't always realise the amount of effort to get that into a new system.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's challenging. And I mean, ultimately, we've got probably 20, 30 years experience in Sage 200 and its predecessors. And we're finding it interesting now. Now we're in the Sage Intacct space. I mean, Intacct was bought by Sage 8 years ago, and it was launched, was it 5 years ago in the UK? And it's only really taken off in the last 2 or 3 years. We've been a partner for about the last 2.5. So we're actually on a learning journey with Intacct as well, and we're already gaining a name for being, I think our average unit value to Sage on a new Intacct is about 60% higher than the average. So we're already getting a reputation for taking on the projects and the development that nobody else dare take on. Our first deal, actually, we were advised by Sage not to close it because it was a difficult one. But we ignored them and did it anyway.
I mean, that's a great niche though for you guys, and to have those case studies to kind of go, we're we're not scared of looking at this stuff, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll do it in as controlled way as we possibly
Yeah,
can.
and we're trying to do it in a bit more of a structured way than we ever did with 200. Obviously, excuse me. Obviously, I inherited a lot of our customers and our development from my predecessor. We're trying to do it in a different way with Intact, in much more packaged products
Yeah.
and solutions, which should then resolve some of the problems that we've had on the 200 space historically around go lives. I'm not saying we're going to get rid of them altogether. There's always going to be some, but actually on the Intact side, we seem to be having fewer issues at go live, but we are holding people to account a lot more on UAT as well,
Yeah.
which I feel awful circling back to it, because you're almost feeling like you're putting everything back onto the customer again. But it's the customer who knows what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day.
It's the customer that's going to tell you that, at go live if something's not right. So why is it this? And like you say, as a team of consultants, you don't know what you don't know. As much as you spend a lot of time sort of working at the business, understanding how they work, what processes are mission critical, how the departments sort of interact with each other. It's impossible to know everything unless you're working in that business, and that's why UAT is it's mission critical for the success of any migration in my eyes.
Yes.
Awesome. Again, in terms of sort of the modern ERP system, and again, I think I know you guys have written many integrations and stuff into 200. It's crazy kind of where we're going in the sense of now we're Dynamics Business Central, Intact, SaaS solutions, the power of the API in terms of what you can integrate with those systems now, I think is probably as good as it's ever been, and they're constantly emerging. What in your view? I mean, what in terms of integrations we see often, we'll see a lot of things like document capture, with OCR, banking integration, currency conversion, stuff like that, and exchange rates sort of same within the system. Is there anything sort of above and beyond that you kind of see often that kind of goes hand in hand with most solutions?
We're finding on Intact especially that Intact is more of a financials based solution. There is stock in there. There is projects, there's contracts, there's whatever you want it to have in, really. But we're tending to find that we're dealing in sectors where there tends to be a best of breed operational system.
I've got it, yeah.
A bit like us, you mentioned earlier, we use Halo. So we use Halo PSA for our internal system, which I know is a Microsoft MSP based product, but actually we're doing something very similar to MSPs. We're selling software.
Yeah.
We're putting it in and we're supporting it.
Yeah.
So it's a very similar system.
Maybe a lot like using Halo as an example. That does. I think that fits in any sort of service industry, really.
Yes, it does.
Because you've still got to manage the case management, the contracts,
Yeah.
Stock and things like that. So it fits very well in that sort of area.
So we're finding that actually the best solution for a lot of customers in that area is actually find the correct operational system and then use your account system as your financials. It's very powerful on multi-currency, multi-company dimensions, which are cost centers on drugs, is how I describe them. So you can slice and dice data however you want, and use that more as a reporting tool. There is a lot of integrations in there. We find the AP automation, all of the document capture is just where businesses are going these days. They're wanting the bank feeds, they're wanting the bank rules. So as soon as that comes in with that reference, off it goes, and it's already coded and everything. So it's interesting. That seems to be the way the business is going. It's the wanting these systems to do the legwork for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think above and beyond that, I think you kind of touched on it there a little bit. The reporting side of it, that's now kind of either included or that can be built on top of, these solutions. It's mind-boggling the detail you can get to. You can really drill into, whatever business you're working with. We can, as long as we understand what's important to them. Generally, you can get a very conclusive set of reports out there to so people can make meaningful decisions. It's no longer based on feeling. So I've got a feeling that this particular area is not performing for us, or I've got a feeling this customer isn't the most profitable. It can be there now, real time, sort of in front of you, which is it's fantastic. I mean, I know Intact. I mean, we've discussed before. Has got a very good reporting engine. From a Microsoft sense, it has its own built-in sense. But if not, you can obviously suck it out to Power BI, model it, manipulate it, and if you need something more complicated than that, there's lots of businesses out there. One that we're very very much involved in that can take data via API, model it, manipulate it, and pump it into any format you need. So it's an incredibly powerful feature, I think, of ERP. I mean, how have you seen that sort of progress? Let's say, so they're going from like paper, as you say, there was be very manual from a reporting point of view.
I think personally, I mean, speaking from a personal point of view, I think the challenge these days is what data do you want? It's because you can get it.
Yeah.
It's whatever you want, however you want it, you can have it.
Yeah.
Do you want it coming on your email every Monday morning? Do you want to run something out? How do you want it? And what do you want it to look like? And where do you want it to come from? I mean, in our instance, do we want something to come from Halo? Do we want it to come from Intact?
Yeah.
Where do we want the information stored? Where do we want it reporting from?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same from a customer perspective as well. I mean, that when you look back to where we were 20 years ago, it's frightening how far we've come. And I dread to think where we're going.
Yeah.
You think, well, actually, we can't go any further, can we? It's like, I suppose when the Nokia phone was out back in the 1990s, you thought, wow,
the pinnacle.
How can we improve on this?
Yeah,
And then Steve Jobs says, "Here, hold my beer."
Yeah.
But and I suppose we're at that with reporting. It's like, actually, it's moved on so much, and where does it go next? And again, we're back to AI. Does AI get involved in that as well?
Yeah, right. Touching on the phone analogy, if you want a really good film to watch around, have you seen the film Blackberry?
No.
Brilliant. Yeah, as much as I was aware of the story of like the rise and fall of BlackBerry, it's really interesting to kind of to watch, and it's obviously it's the story of the owner, and how it built from a very small office above a shop to this multi-billion-pound company, and then one day it literally did all just sort of tumble down by Steve Jobs holding up the iPhone, and that was from sort of a lack of an unwillingness to accept that there's a different way of doing things, and you do see that, don't you? And it's
you do.
like you're going to say now that it's like where we think we are now, and it can't get any better. You've got to have your eyes and your mind open to well, what could we do?
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree. I guess like one other thing that we've seen a little bit of, and like I say, a lot of the things we've discussed in terms of UAT, training, and getting the right stakeholders involved, from an early stage, is the culture change sometimes and user resistance when there's a new system coming in. And I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are around how much of it is sometimes just fear of change, how much of it is sometimes fear of maybe a light being shone on somebody that has been able to hide before because there hasn't been the controls in place, where there hasn't been the reporting to sort of really understand is that person effective in the business.
Yeah, I think people fear change. I think it's a natural instinct. I think even people who drive change, which I'd like to think I do. Internally, we've just changed all our systems, as you know.
Yeah.
And I've been the one that's been driving it. I'm a bit fearful of it as well. So I think because what you've got kind of works, but you just know that you're going to get something better at the end of it.
Yeah.
But diving into the unknown, well, obviously it's all planned and UAT'd, but I think people do fear change. I think people sometimes, especially on the Intact side, I think people sometimes fear for the jobs because I think, well, actually, my job is to do the bank rec, for example.
Yeah.
And suddenly the system's doing 80% of it for you. Well, it's really to make people more productive.
Yes, I think that's the key driver that people understand. It's not there to replace them. It's ideally there to make them more efficient, so they can concentrate on other areas, even learn new skills, take on more responsibility that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do if they were doing it the old way.
That's true, you know. And I mean, there's a customer who we sold the system to last year. I won't name them, but they had a team of about 6 in their accounts department. And they'd got plans to double in size over the next couple of years, and they're well on track for it. Actually, they're probably going to exceed it. And when we were presenting Sage Intact as a solution to that business, you could see the fear in the staff as to, in fact, one of them actually said, "But what am I going to do if that's doing it?"
Yeah.
You know, because her job was to input purchase invoices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they've got data capture. So document capture is going to deal with the invoices, and she's just going to deal with the exceptions.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but when they've doubled in size, the idea is they will not need 2 of you. Correct. They'll just need you.
Yeah.
And that's part of the ROI of the system.
Well,
so I think people do fear change.
Yeah.
I get it, because I do this job and I do it well.
Mm.
What's my job going to become? How does it happen? But I think that's something that we need to help the customer, or the lead at the customer. I think that's something we need to help educate the team on.
Yeah.
As they move through the process. You're always going to get people resistant to change. I've got it internally. I've even got people internally whose job it is to make other people change out at customers who don't. And I'm sure you've had this internally as well, where actually it's their job to go out and sell change.
Yeah.
And you try and change their role, and it's, whoa, hang on. So, you know, but I get that, and I've got to overcome that, and I've got to get them comfortable with that change. So I think there needs to be somebody at the customer side to lead that, who's got the vision to see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think we're instrumental in helping do that as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. It would definitely, sometimes it needs to feel like a comfort blanket, you know, rather than anything else. But no, absolutely agree. Move on a little bit. I'll kind of look at some useful stats or some statistics from sort of the industry, and again, pose a few questions. I mean, one of the ones is manufacturing companies are the #1 user of ERP systems, which I'd absolutely agree with. What would you kind of say is a close second?
I think it's people. I think it's people who are heavy on stock.
Yes.
Generally.
Yeah.
To be honest. So probably retailers, probably wholesalers.
That'd be my view. I think when I think about the customers we work with, they generally fall into one of the two. The only other time probably I see people using ERP, and they might be if they're multi-company, you know, if they don't fall into one of those two brackets. Because again, I think the benefits around sort of intercompany consolidation, reporting, and things like that are kind of too good to ignore. But yeah, I absolutely agree on the other two. So this is an interesting one. More than half of organizations with ERP software use cloud-based solutions rather than on-premise solutions. So I guess that is, you know, in my language, it's the difference of, you know, Nav and Business Central. In your world, you know, be 200 and Intact. And I'd probably say I'm surprised it's half. Do you know?
Yeah.
Certainly from some, obviously Nav has gone end of life now, so a lot of people from in my world have had to sort of move to something different. Usually Business Central if they've been in the Microsoft space. But yeah, it's surprising to me that, you know, it is half.
I guess it depends on the size of the business and the sectors we're talking, though. Because if we're talking businesses generally across the board, then I suppose a lot of small businesses are using your Sage Business Accounting, your Xero, your QuickBooks, and they're probably taking up a good proportion. I'd suggest medium segment. I don't know, because we're still seeing a lot of traction on 200, which, as you know, sits on a server, because, you know, we work with you on Azure. So, you know, you're our Azure go-to. And it's, so yeah, Sage 200 has to sit on a server somewhere, which we turn cloud by putting it on Azure, but it isn't really a SaaS product.
It's like, say, especially, I'd say it probably does more in the medium space than sort of anywhere else. There is still a little bit of an aversion with some customers that don't want to move from CapEx to OpEx in the way that they're funding their technology as well.
It tends to be your older accountants. Sorry if anybody's watching who loves that. But to be fair, I'm an older accountant. Who like their data stored on a server in the corner of the office, Nobody can get at it.
It depreciates over.
When I joined the business that worked on paper, the MD at that time, he's passed away now, sadly, but he was in his 60s at the time, 20 odd years ago, refused to do online banking. Would not do online banking. I'm not having anybody looking at any of my data online. It's I've got my checkbook, I've got my passbook, and I go in and it's like, oh, okay. And I think there is still that mindset with accounting data as well. I think it is moving. But you do still get the people who, I want it on a server. Thanks.
Yeah, it's. I'd say it's really weird because, like, over the years, certainly the past couple of years, I'd say in terms of infrastructure deployments, we've done. They've probably been like 70% cloud. In terms of, like, say, Azure and things like that. But the last 6 months, we've probably quoted more physical hardware than we have in years, which is crazy. And I don't know whether it's climate, whether it's the cost increase from what's going on with the government, and people would just rather know it's I've paid for it, it's in that room, forget about it, rather than have that continual monthly cost to run this stuff. But there's still the challenge then of that customer. This is still going to need to spend ongoing in terms of the hardware maintenance, software upgrades, things like that. Whereas anything in a SaaS world is evergreen. I don't know when the tipping point will be. I guess where whether Sage and even Microsoft will just kind of go, well, really, it's cloud or nothing.
Yeah,
but interesting. And then final sort of stat. It's not surprising that 65% of organizations believe AI is critical to their ERP systems, which is mad to think it weren't around sort of 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's critical to how people work.
Yeah, it is. I was at an event, a Sage partner event a few months ago, and there was actually a customer panel, and I think there were 4 customers there. One of them hadn't even thought about AI, but the others were all very up on it, and the people in their business are definitely using it.
Yeah,
they know they've got to embrace it. Yeah, it's there.
Awesome. From your point of view, again, just one a little bit aside from the ERP sort of space, again, still in the AI vein, but is there anything that you've come across recently that sits outside of the stuff you deal with day to day in terms of AI that you've kind of seen and thought, that's really cool, or that's really useful?
No, not really. I wasn't prepared for that question.
Sorry.
Give me an example, Steve. Have you got one? I'll turn interviewer.
One for me, again, because I'm just kind of fascinated where this stuff goes a little bit, and obviously it is Chat GPT adjacent in fairness. So, but I think it's only just sort of become available in the UK. There's something called Sora that sits within Chat GPT, and it's video basically production, or short sort of clips. So you can basically type into it a bit of a storyboard of there's a man on the 18th green about to hold this putt, and tell it a bit of a story, and it will create a very lifelike video just from the information you've given it. And then you can obviously change things, or change his t-shirt color to this, or change these characteristics, and within relatively seconds you've got that, and you just kind of like, that's crazy that it understands that level of a sort of context, because like, obviously image creation is kind of one thing, I guess, and it's that's been around for a little while now, but it was the video side of things. I personally not sort of played around with or come across yet, and it came available. I was like, I'll have a little play around with that, and it was mad, to be fair.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Fair enough.
Sorry, Steve.
Final one then. You're stranded on a desert island. You can have 3 pieces of tech to take with you. What would they be?
Have I got Wi-Fi on this island?
Well, we'll say yes. We'll say it's a desert island adjacent to a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Okay. I do spend a lot of time on my phone and my iPad, so I suppose phone, iPad, and AirPods, so then I can actually listen to stuff as well. Which I suppose if I'm on an island, I don't need them. But yeah, I think that'd be my go-to. I'd have to find out how many Barnsley I've lost by each weekend.
Oh, mate, let's not bring this down. It's been a really good chat talking about Barnsley. I was there, the Blackpool game. a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was a tough watch. It was
Yeah.
a tough watch.
Yeah.
But season's nearly over now. Concentrate on the golf.
I can say it's golf season.
Spring around the corner. Let's get on the golf course. Thanks for coming in, mate. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been awesome to sort of hear, your experience from both sides of the fence. And like I said sort of before, you guys have got fantastic pedigree in this space.
Likewise.
So no, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.